What's going on, guys? Fun with Knives back again, and we are going to take a look at the WE Knife 701B. As you can see here on the side of the box, this is the other item that Zell sent along for me to check out. And I believe this is my first experience with an actual WE branded knife. I know VDK knives were coming out of the WE's factory, but this is a newer WE knife, the 701, with, as you can see here, a satin blade made out of D2, and this has the black G10 handle, not the green. So we're going to treat this like an unboxing or an overview because, again, this is not my knife, but I figured it'd be a good talking point for a video. You see WE's logo on there, kind of luminescent with all those colors in there, and just a pretty plain cardboard box with their contact information. You open it up and you have your nice WE knife branded pouch, of course. Unzip it, and you have a whole lot of cool extras too. You got their business card, again with their contact information. You have the tool for the proprietary hardware, if I can get that word out, which we'll talk about, and a WE knife microfiber cleaning cloth. So a whole lot of extras for a $100 knife, especially with the pouch. You don't see that too often. You know, those are usually your mid-techs and your higher end knives, which I don't know if this knife technically is or not because of the price point. And here is the monster. This thing is huge, and let's face it, it's weird looking, but it's unique, and that's why I was so stoked to check this model out. So let's go over the specs real quick before we get into anything else. We have a blade length of 4 inches, so big beefy blade on this thing. Handle length of 5 inches, making your overall length, you guessed it, 9 inches. And that cutting edge is just a hair under 4 inches, but we'll say 4 inches just for sake of brevity here. Your blade thickness, is 0.16 inches. So a nice stocky blade. And your handle thickness is going to be 0.57. So this is over half an inch, but it doesn't feel that thick in hand. I think it's all that contouring they've done on that G10 that raise that statistic a little bit. And the weight on this guy is going to be 5.62 ounces. So not absurd when you compare it to some other models of the same size, like, let me see here, this badly modded Kershaw CQC 4K XL is in the same size category and weighs a lot more. There's a lot more steel here, less G10. So the weight is actually really manageable. Now, before we get into my thoughts on this blade, does this remind you guys of something? Of an animal, perhaps? Because Zell said this handle looks like a leaf, and I definitely think it does. There's kind of got that pattern to it, but the blade, to me, makes this whole thing look like a fossil of something, like a prehistoric alligator or a pterodactyl or something. I don't know what it is, but it definitely has a lot of character. I mean, I can't think of another blade that looks like this. I mean, even my Yojimbo 2 from Spyderco that I had once upon a time had that straight Wharncliffe aggressive blade, but nothing with this toucan-like beak up here. So all in all, I think the 701 is completely unique, regardless of what coloration you get it in, with the dark stonewash blade or the green G10, whatever it is, this thing is going to be one conversation starter in your pocket. So on to the blade, made out of D2 tool steel. She's going to hold an edge exceptionally well, but will rust readily if you don't take care of it. This does have a hollow grind, and as you can see, that satin blade is reflecting a whole lot of light. But that hollow grind does travel up a good distance, and you are pretty damn fine behind the edge. And this thing came with a nice edge from the factory. You can see here, swedge up on top, kind of a rounded portion, drops back down. You have a triangular opening hole. It's mostly for aesthetic flair, but it is functional. I'll show you guys that in a moment. And get this to stop reflecting on the light. There is D2 written here, but other than that, this is a completely sterile blade, which I actually like to see. It's not branded everywhere because actually all the hardware is kind of branded. So kind of moving away from what most knife companies do. All in all, I think the blade is actually really functional. I don't know if it needs to be quite this large. I mean, EDC knives, let's face it, are usually used for opening boxes, opening packages, and Wharncliffe blades usually excel at those kind of tasks. So I like the blade, I do. It's got a lot of character, it's large enough to accommodate a whole lot of tasks, and it's actually a very functional based blade shape, even with its swedges and everything like that. And on to deployment, which is definitely the best part about this knife. If I haven't mentioned the price point already, this thing costs $100 on the dot. And it comes with a 200 plus action. I have knives that cost more than twice what this knife costs that do not have this good of an action. Now, of course, that is helped by a well dialed in detent and a heavy big blade. There's a lot of inertia, a lot of energy that needs to be carried for that to lock open, and that's always the case. But this opens well with the flipper tab, which I'll give you a close up here. It's got some jimping on it, fairly standard shape. You can kind of push button it, rockets out there if you do that, and light switch. But you need very minimal effort to actually open this knife. And the triangular shaped opening hole works very well for your thumb and your middle finger flick. So it's just like a Spyderco flipper. It opens in any way you could possibly think of, and you could even throw a zip tie on there if you wanted to, have that wave feature going on. So deployment, I'm a huge fan of, and closing action, I probably should show you guys that. It is completely drop shut. I mean, that is a heavy Wharnie coming down and wants to be in that closed position. On to the blade centering, which is perfect. You guys can see that. Dead on, and there is no blade play whatsoever. This is a stainless steel inset frame lock. A liner lock. That liner is inset within the G10. Close up of that. It's locking up pretty early, but it's a very sturdy lockup. For what I would ask this knife to do if it were mine, liner lock is plenty sufficient. I mean, it really is. And on to the hardware, I guess. This is the first knife that I've ever owned with proprietary hardware, and I don't know if I'm very fond of it. I mean, they do include the tool to disassemble, maintain your knife, and reassemble it. We do have these star heads. Everybody knows that We Knives uses this hardware. But if the tool works well, which I'm not going to try it, I don't want to mar up the hardware if I don't have to, but I assume it works fairly well, and I'm not bothered that they want to do their own thing if they include the tool, just like most YouTubers will say. So the hardware does have kind of a dull gold or bronze anodization. It is all titanium, I believe. You see Wee's logo in the pivot there and on the clip. I did throw this in the pocket for just a couple of seconds, and that clip actually works very well. It's got a nice spring to it. It's going to hold in very well, and it's actually just thick enough to accommodate most pants. If you got some serious heavy-duty tactical pants, maybe not the case, but I think how this clip is positioned, straight down the center of the knife, flowing into the leaf design of the handle here, I think it works very well and actually carries this monster of a blade pretty easily. And that flipper tab is kind of in line with the rest of the knife, as you can see. So that's not going to be pocket pecking, as Nick Shabazz would say, on everything else in your pocket. And most of this blade that's sticking outside of the handle in the closed position is going to be, again, outside of the blade. So this is a G10 handle, but it is not textured in a normal G10 way. It's not grippy like a cold steel. It is just heavily 3D machined. You can see here there's divots in it. There's a line going through it. There's all these different segments. I don't know if I can actually get that in the light correctly, but it's a very cool handle design. Like I said, this thing reminds me of something you'd see at a museum. You know, a fossilized leaf and some weird, prehistoric bird as a blade. It's kind of a weird combination that works really well together. But I do have an ergonomic quarrel with this knife that Zelric actually touched on, is this choil area here. I'm not sure, but it looks like it's intended for 2 fingers, for your first 2 fingers to fit in here. And keep in mind, this is a very large knife with a long handle, but my 2 fingers do not fit in that finger choil. My middle finger's really digging in. It's almost as if this knife was designed to be held back here, kind of a choked back position, where you're not pressing up on the flipper tab as we usually do. So if you're all the way back here, it's actually a very comfortable grip. There's a spot for each one of your fingers to actually land on, and a divot for your thumb. You actually get up on top of the jimping if you really need to. But that's not usually how I use my knives, so this ergonomic hotspot is not my favorite, but the clip, again, is not a hotspot whatsoever. So very well designed clip and very good execution. So onto the back spacer. Again, same color of anodization. I believe that is titanium. It's got some ribbing or jimping to it. Very well machined. That's something about this Wee knife that I'm shocked. Other than the deployment is the fit and finish. I mean, if I had to guess how much this knife was, I mean, I would say 150, 160 just because of the D2. If this knife had, you know, a higher end steel, something powdered like a CPM 20CV, I would guess 200. It's just because it's that well built. Everything just seems to fit exactly how it should, which is awesome to see that We Knives is bringing something like this to the $100 and under market. And I think that's what they're trying to do with all these G10 and D2 models that they're putting out. So backspacer, very cool. It's a half open design. And then you have a rolling pin for a lanyard loop. So you can throw your paracord through there, and this actually rolls instead of being a static pull to hold in your paracord. So very cool. So all in all, I like this knife. I like how well it's built, but I don't know if it's the knife for me. I don't know if I'm so fond of that design language that I need to go out and buy one. But what this does, at least for me, is reaffirm that We Knives is a huge contender in the flipper knife game. I mean, I don't think you can contest that this is not a good flipper. Sure, it might not be the design for you, but they have plenty of designs that are more subtle, that are maybe better suited to an everyday carry knife. You know, of the 3.5-inch blade or under, or 3-inch blade or under, this just happens to be their monster Wharncliffe. So other than the ergonomic issue, I have one other thing that I'm a little bit worried about, is the space that you have from the tip to the butt end of the knife. That is barely encased in G10. Now, if I really try, I can get my nail in there and actually pull this blade out. Very unlikely that you cut yourself or injure yourself on that portion of the tip, but just something to note, that it may become a problem as this knife is used, sharpened, and maybe you snap off that tip or something, just the very end of it. It's not necessarily fragile, but it is acute. That might become an issue. Not entirely sure, just something to point out. So all in all, not the best everyday carry knife in the world. It's wide, it's a little large, sure, it's a little bit aggressive, but it is damn cool. So I just want to give another shout out to Zelric for allowing me to take a look at this knife. I don't think I would have taken a look at it otherwise. So I'm really grateful for that. I didn't mention too, I'm always forgetting things when I'm doing these overviews. This does have an internal stop pin, if that matters to you guys at all, not an external stop pin. So something else to note. But all your edges, again, the fit and finish, it's all chamfered off. It's nice and smooth, where it should be, action, snappy. It's a very well-built knife. So if you guys like the 701 design, I don't think I have anything holding me back from actually recommending this knife. Now, of course, I'd love to spend some more time with We products, but that might happen in the future. So until then, thanks for watching, and remember, have fun with your knives.